Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here with another video for you, and this time it's an opinion piece. I came across on one of the men's rights places that I visit. I came across a Selective service meme, and it's always something that's really irked me as a men's rights activist and a man. And I think the laws are extremely unfair to men in regards to selective service registration, and I wanted to talk about it. So here we go. For those of you who aren't in the U.S., or maybe you are and you just don't know, men in the U.S. have to register for the draft. We call it selective service, and it doesn't mean anything happens. It's just if you're a man that's 18 to 25 and you're a U.S. citizen or an immigrant living in the U.S., you're required to register with selective service. And nothing happens unless there's a crisis. If they call a draft, they'll pick a lottery number out of the selective service pool, and and they pick it by birth date as well. And if you get picked, then you have to go into the military. But it's only for crisis situations. Otherwise, we depend on a fully voluntary draft, or fully volunteer military. But it says men in the U.S. on student, visitor, or diplomatic visas, and women are not required to register. And that's the main thing for me. You know, it makes sense for people on student, visitor, or diplomatic visas to not have to register. But it doesn't make sense for women not to register. In the past, women were not allowed to go into the military. In the name of equality, they are now allowed to. And so my argument is that if women are allowed to choose to go into the draft or into the military, then they should also have the obligation to sign up for a selective service. And you might say, "Oh, what does that matter?" Well, the U.S. has actually used the draft somewhat recently. They make it sound like it's no big deal, but back in 1973 is the last time when it ended the last time. So that's not actually that long ago, and obviously there have been other wars that we used a draft in. So and it doesn't even matter. Even if there is no draft, it's the whole principle of the thing. But there are real world punishments for men who choose not to sign up for a selective service. And so it is something men have to do. And if they don't do it, their quality of life goes down. So first here, I'm going to click on the who must register chart. And it's probably going to amaze you. I don't think a lot of people know this, because this is I did a little digging and I actually didn't even know it myself. But I'm going to just skip a lot of this and go down to handicapped physically or mentally, able to function in public with or without assistance. Yes, you have to register for a selective service. Continually confined to a residence, hospital, or institution, then you don't have to. Now, keep in mind, it's only men on here, so women don't have to sign up for the selective service. It's on one of these. But there are some other interesting ones as well. U.S. transgender people. I didn't even know it dealt with with those, but U.S. citizens or immigrants who are born male and have changed their gender to female. So male to female transgenders have to register. Just imagine being a female transgender in the military. I mean, that would not go over very well. Individuals who are born female and have changed their gender to male, they do not have to because they were originally female. So this is the female privilege, if you will, that feminists don't want to talk about. And in fairness, there have been a few feminist groups that have come out and said that women should have to, sign up for the draft and all of that. But overwhelmingly, women don't want to and push against that. And so most feminist groups have stated basically the argument that women shouldn't have to because they're not physically able enough and that kind of thing. Men are stronger, all of that. The thing is, I think the number one argument against women in the military is and having to sign up for selective service is their physical ability on average. But if you're forcing literally handicapped men to sign up for the selective service, I think women are a little above handicapped physically or mentally men that are, as long as they're able to function in public with or without assistance. Like, some men with disabilities may get along in the military well enough, but they're putting their lives on the line. And it's just not good to be in the military with a disability. And, let's not put women on such a low standard that we're putting them inherently below the disabled. Not to put the disabled down. I'm disabled myself. I have epilepsy. But, I think a healthy woman should have to serve before I do. Or should be in selective service before I am, for crying out loud. I mean, one bomb would go off and I could have a seizure, literally, from the flashes. So now I don't think I actually, in the end, would be ever brought into the draft because they would basically take my lottery number. I'd have to go in, they'd evaluate me and then say I'm not medically fit. But that would be a whole ordeal. I'd actually have to go if I didn't, register for the selective service. I could be punished, and so just the fact that there's this law, even though I'd probably never have to actually go, it still is something for me to deal with. But just to go through some of these others quickly. All male U.S. citizens born after December 31st, 1959 who are 18 but not 26 years old, except as noted. And then there's some military people that can get out of it, but most, if you're in a military school, most of them have to register for selective service. Undocumented immigrants have to, but the thing is, they're already undocumented, so why would they? And that's another issue with the undocumented immigrants. Then you have dual national U.S. citizens that do have to sign up for selective service, and that's the downfall of dual nationality, is you can be forced into multiple militaries that way. Potentially. Refugee parole. I think there might be a rule, though, that if you're in another military, then you don't have to join the U.S.'s military. Because there gets to be a conflict of interest. Say you were Russian and American, and you were, forced to go into both militaries. Or, even worse, North Korean and American. That would be quite interesting. It says if you're, I'll just go over the exemptions. Lawful non-immigrants on current non-immigrant visas. A complete list of acceptable documentation for exemption may be found here. Okay. And then seasonal agricultural workers, incarcerated or hospitalized or institutionalized for medical reasons don't have to sign up. Although the asterisk says that you must register within 30 days of release until already age 26. And then it says handicapped physically or mentally. I went over that, but continually confined to a residence, hospital, or institution. So most disabled people will have to actually register for selective service. Then there's a transgender one. If you're female to male, transgender, they still count you as female. So that's that. So I mentioned there are punishments, and what are some of those punishments? Just really quickly, it says federal student loans and grant programs will be lost. You can become ineligible for them. So just think about that. Federal student loans and grant programs. They'll basically take away your ability to go to school. Federal job training under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, formerly Workforce Investment Act. So they start taking away some of these government benefits, especially federal government benefits. It says federal jobs or security clearance as a contractor, so they won't hire you. And then if you're an immigrant, you'll lose your U.S. citizenship. So that's a pretty big deal. And then under why register, I just have to show this. Number one, it's the law. But what I really wanted to show you is that reasons to register. There are some ridiculous things in here. Registration is the law. A man's only duty right now under the Military Selective Service Act is to register at age 18 and then to let Selective Service know within 10 days of any changes in the information he provided on his registration form until he turns 26 years old. Oh, that's it? Only basically give up the potential to live if you get selected by a lottery? Wow, thanks. What a small price to pay. Fairness and equity. By registering all eligible men, Selective Service ensures a fair and equitable draft, if ever required. However, there has not been a draft since 1973. Number one, 1973 is not that long ago. Number two, registering all eligible men ensures a fair and equitable draft. Hello, there's over half the population you're missing. Literally, women make up 55% of the population. And that's not even including the disabled. So, I just found that to be a bit funny. And, this whole site is ridiculous. They have little exclamation marks oh, we should be in such a good mood to sign up for selective service, and they talk about it like it's no big deal, and it's actually kind of demeaning, to be honest, and patronizing. Says insurance for the nation. By registering, a man's voluntary participation helps provide a hedge against unforeseen threats. It is a relatively low-cost insurance policy for a nation. See, that. I am actually pro-selective service. I think that you need to be able to have a draft quickly in case, the country gets attacked, there's a world war that breaks out, or we need to preemptively strike or something. I think we need to be able to call people up. But why do you need to even put in it is a relatively low cost insurance policy for a nation? Like, it makes it seem like, oh, you're not doing anything major. It's a small price to pay, like, no big deal. You know what I mean? Like, just keep that out of it. It's kind of like demeaning. Civic duty. It's your responsibility to ensure that young men 18 through 25 understand the law so they can make an informed decision about registration compliance. Currently, more than 90% of eligible young men are registered. It's a civic duty of every young man to comply with the law. Well, yeah. I think that's pretty much obvious. So, protect eligibility for future benefits. It's what a man's got to do. Wow. It's what a man's got to do. By registering, a young man stays eligible for jobs, college loans and grants, job training, driver's license in most states, and U.S. citizenship for immigrant men. So you could even lose your driver's license. Just think about that. That is pretty freaking ridiculous. Like, one of the requirements for disability is in order to qualify, like, one of the main factors they look at is if someone can drive. Because if you can't drive, they say it lowers your quality of life so greatly that you should be able to get some sort of disability payment for that. And in selective service, they're saying you should be punished so badly for not signing up for selective service that they should lower your quality of life to effectively, do something to you that would qualify you for disability benefits. If you had some sort of, like, health issue by not having a driver's license. So this whole thing, some of these punishments are quite hefty. And for people who say that it's no big deal, to have a selective service registration, and that we shouldn't make women sign up, my response is, if it's no big deal, then why can't women sign up? And I actually think that, I think the selective service is necessary. I know a lot of men's rights activists will disagree with me. In fact, I actually had a representative that was completely anti-selective service, anti-draft, all of that. Now, I think that's being a bit naive, but I certainly think that if we are to have a selective service, which we do, it has to be for men and women. Or you have to ban women from the military. Because if you want to make the argument that women can't perform in the military, then they shouldn't be allowed to voluntarily sign up either. So this whole thing is a complete logical contradiction. And we've had people like David Ashe, who've led the military, and he has said that, women need to be considered. This needs to be updated, so women have to be considered to join. But so far, we haven't had any law changes. So, this whole selective service thing is a bit ridiculous. It's just another way that women have privilege in the United States that they don't realize, and that people are willing, it comes down to male disposability, where people are willing to give up the life of a man much more easily than they are willing to give up the life of a woman. And people will see this as no big deal because a man's doing it, so it's no big deal for him to sign up and take the risk of being drafted but it's a big deal to change the laws and force women to also sign up. You see all these double standards? So I, for one, want to see the law changed. Let's get this thing updated. Let's get women. You're never going to get the selective service taken away, so it's no longer a law. So let's put the responsibility on everybody and get women into this thing. All right. Have a good day, guys.